When the blood oath was made, it wasn't just a promise of love, it was a curse of destiny. Season 2 of Blood of My Blood isn't just returning with passion and heartbreak. It's bringing war, betrayal, and time itself tearing families apart. The fiery crosses have been lit, the clans are rising, and Brian Fraser's fate is about to take a turn that could change the entire Outlander universe forever. But behind the glory and loyalty lies a secret that could rewrite everything we thought we knew about the Frasers and the Stewarts. Season 2 opens with a silence that feels heavier than battle drums. The air is cold, thick with tension, and the Highlands are preparing for war. The Jacobite uprising has officially begun, and Brian Fraser knows there's no turning back. His love for Ellen gave him courage, but now that courage is about to be tested like never before. As dawn breaks, we find him among men sharpening blades and whispering prayers, their loyalty burning as bright as the fires on the hills. Yet behind Brian's determination lies a haunting truth. He's not fighting for a king he believes in. He's fighting because honor demands it, and because every man who refuses the call will be branded a coward. But there's something different in Brian this time. The gentle, romantic man we saw in Season 1, the one who swore love by blood, is slowly disappearing. What's left is someone harder, someone who's seen death and learned that survival comes with a price. Ellen feels it too. Her husband is changing, and though she stands by him, fear has begun to creep into her eyes. Every time he rides out, she wonders if the man who returns will still be the one she loves, or just a shadow of him. The rebellion begins to spiral faster than anyone expected. Word spreads that the clans are divided, their leaders at odds. The Mackenzies, the Grants, and the Frasers, all caught between loyalty and vengeance. And in the middle of this chaos stands Brian, trying to unite what's already broken. He's haunted by the death of Malcolm Grant, the man he killed in self-defense, and by the vengeance that's sure to follow. The Grants want blood for blood. So while the clans are supposed to unite against the English, old grudges threaten to destroy them from within. Meanwhile, Ellen finds herself trapped in her own kind of war. Left behind at their small cottage, she tries to keep hope alive as soldiers march through the valleys. Her every moment is filled with dread. Letters arrive from the battlefield, some bearing news of victory, others soaked in grief. But none carry Brian's name. Weeks turn into months, and rumors spread that the rebellion is failing. The English are advancing, and the Highlanders are falling apart. Back at the battlefield, Brian witnesses horror after horror. The Battle of Sheriffmuir isn't a glorious stand for Scotland. It's chaos. Men fighting without orders, brothers turning against brothers, blood mixing with mud. Brian fights like a man possessed, his hands trembling not from fear but from rage. Every swing of his sword feels like he's striking against fate itself. Yet amid the madness, one image keeps him sane. Ellen's face, the promise they made under the stars. Then comes the turning point. In the middle of the battle, Brian saves a wounded soldier from the enemy side, only to discover the man is not English at all, but a Highlander spy working for the crown. Before dying, the spy whispers something that shatters Brian's faith. It was never about the king. It was about the clans. They sold us before it even began. That single truth burns inside Brian's mind like wildfire. He realizes the rebellion was doomed long before a sword was drawn. Betrayal is not across the border. It's within their own ranks. When Brian finally returns home, he's not the same. His clothes are torn, his hands still stained with blood. Ellen runs to him, but the man who steps through that door is silent, hollow, almost unrecognizable. He tells her the rebellion is lost, that the Highlands will never be the same. But what he doesn't say, what he can't, is that he's lost more than just a war. He's lost faith in his clan, in honor, and maybe even in himself. Across time, the story shifts to Julia and Henry, stranded in separate centuries. Julia, now trapped in the past with baby William, tries to navigate the brutal aftermath of the Jacobite defeat. She seeks out Claire, desperate for a way to find Henry again. Claire warns her that time doesn't give second chances easily, that once someone is lost between the stones, their fate is tied to history itself. But Julia refuses to believe that. If her blood connects her to the Frasers, she believes it can connect her back to Henry too. Henry, on the other hand, wakes in a nightmare. Left behind in 18th century Scotland, he's surrounded by smoke, blood, and despair. The trauma of war, both World War I and now this one, twists his mind. He can't tell what's real and what's memory anymore. He wanders the ruins of the battlefield, calling for Julia and William, hearing only echoes. And somewhere deep inside him, something begins to crack. The camera may not show it, but you can feel it. The threads of time are tightening. 2 centuries, 2 wars, 2 loves torn apart by destiny. And all of it leading back to one truth. Blood is not just a bond, it's a curse. The nights grow longer, and Scotland feels cursed with silence. The rebellion's embers are fading, but the consequences are only beginning to burn. Brian and Ellen, now fugitives of their own clans, hide deep within the Highlands, where mist covers the hills like a shroud and every footstep could lead to betrayal. The war might be over, but vengeance is not. The Grants have sworn blood retribution for Malcolm's death, and word spreads that a bounty has been placed on Brian Fraser's head. The man who once rode proudly for honor now moves like a ghost through forests and shadows. Ellen can see the darkness consuming him. The kind eyes that once lit up with hope are now sharp and distant. Each day, he disappears for hours, hunting, scouting, avoiding the soldiers that patrol the lands. When he returns, he barely speaks. He keeps his sword close, even as he sleeps. And though Ellen tries to hold onto the love that once defined them, she feels it slipping through her fingers. What she doesn't know is that Brian is keeping a secret. A letter hidden in his coat, a dying man's confession, one that reveals that Colum, Ellen's own brother, was among those who betrayed the Jacobites. That revelation poisons Brian's heart. He knows that telling Ellen would destroy her, but staying silent is slowly destroying him. Each time he looks into her eyes, he sees not just his wife, but the sister of the man who doomed thousands to die. And as guilt and fury twist inside him, his nights are haunted by visions of the battlefield. The screams, the faces, the fire, and the words of the dying spy. They sold us before it began. Meanwhile, far away across the stones of Cray na Dun, time itself starts to fracture. Julia is growing desperate. Baby William is growing older in the wrong century, and every moment she spends in the 18th century brings more danger. The Redcoats have begun hunting survivors of the rebellion, and rumors of a woman who speaks strange have reached their ears. Julia knows she's running out of time. With Claire's help, she begins searching for old Fraser records, names, dates, family lines, hoping to find some clue that connects to her husband, Henry. And when she stumbles upon a name in an old church registry, Brian Fraser, she realizes she's living in the same time as her ancestor. That discovery changes everything. Julia now believes that saving Henry might require her to find Brian first. Claire warns her that interfering with her family's past could destroy the very timeline she's trying to preserve, but Julia doesn't care. She's already lost too much. As Claire reluctantly joins her, the two women set off through the Highlands, following rumors of a fugitive Fraser hiding among the hills. And though Julia doesn't know it yet, her journey is about to collide with Brian's darkest hour. Back in hiding, Brian and Ellen's peace is shattered when soldiers discover their cottage. It's a cold night, rain falling like knives. When they hear the horses outside, Brian grabs Ellen, whispering for her to run, but she refuses. "I am your wife. I'll not run from your side," she says, echoing her words from their blood oath. Together, they flee into the forest, chased by torchlight and gunfire. The tension is suffocating, each heartbeat louder than thunder. But as they reach the riverbank, tragedy strikes. A bullet pierces Ellen's shoulder, and Brian barely manages to pull her into the water, using the current to escape. They survive, but barely, and the aftermath. Ellen lies weak from fever, her wound festering. Brian searches for help, but every village he reaches is too afraid to shelter them. The name Fraser is cursed now. In desperation, he turns to the last person he ever wanted to see, Jocasta. When he arrives at her estate, soaked and half mad with fear, Jocasta looks at him with both pity and anger. She hides them despite the danger, but warns him. There is no peace for a man who fights ghosts. It's during these days of hiding that Brian's secret begins to unravel. Ellen overhears Jocasta speaking to him, mentioning Colum's betrayal, the letter, and Brian's silence. The heartbreak in her eyes when she confronts him is devastating. "You should have told me," she whispers, voice trembling. "You should have let me hate him myself." But Brian can't find the words to defend himself. His silence is an admission of guilt, not for what he did, but for what he's become. As Ellen recovers, she begins to see a side of Brian she never knew, a man torn between love and vengeance, driven by guilt, unable to forgive. And when word reaches them that the British are offering pardons to those who surrender, Jocasta urges him to take it. But Brian refuses. He says the cause might be lost, but honor isn't something that can be bargained. Ellen pleads with him to think of their future, of their unborn child she's just discovered she's carrying, but he only stares into the fire. Lost in thought, across time, Henry begins to remember flashes of his past life. Julia's face, William's cry, the stones. His trauma twists these memories into nightmares, but through them, he starts to piece together the truth. The war he's living through isn't random. It's the same bloodline curse that's been repeating for centuries. He finds shelter among surviving rebels who tell stories of a man named Fraser, a warrior with fire in his eyes and death in his shadow. Henry doesn't realize it yet, but he's hearing tales of Brian, and as both men, separated by time but bound by blood, walk the same haunted paths, a storm begins to build. The same fire that once lit the rebellion is returning, this time burning through centuries. Fate is no longer a circle, it's a spiral. And it's pulling everyone, Brian, Ellen, Julia, and Henry, into its center. The storm finally breaks, not with thunder, but with betrayal. Word spreads that the Crown has issued a final decree. Any Highlander who refuses to surrender will be hunted, their lands burned, their families taken. The once proud clans scatter, and the Highlands echo with the cries of those who chose freedom over obedience. Among them, Brian Fraser stands defiant. His blade is worn, his heart heavier than iron, but he refuses to bow. To him, surrender would mean dishonor, not just to himself, but to every man who fell beside him. Yet even he knows the war has become hopeless. Ellen feels the weight of this truth pressing on her chest. The fever from her wound has faded, but the fear has not. She knows the British are closing in and that Brian's pride will be the death of them both. One night, she begs him to run away with her, to leave Scotland behind, to start over somewhere no one knows their names. But Brian only looks at her with that haunted stillness in his eyes. "If I leave now," he says quietly, "I'll never find peace again." She realizes then that he's not fighting for a king or a country anymore. He's fighting himself. Jocasta arranges safe passage for Ellen to travel north, far beyond the reach of the soldiers, but Ellen refuses to go without her husband. Still, fate has other plans. Before dawn, soldiers raid the estate. Jocasta is dragged away in chains, accused of harboring traitors, while Ellen is forced to flee once again. She hides in the forest, calling for Brian, but he's already been captured. When he's dragged before the British commander, he stands unbroken, his hands tied, but his eyes full of quiet fury. The commander offers him mercy if he betrays his fellow rebels, but Brian laughs. "The day I kneel for mercy," he says, "is the day Scotland's heart stops beating." Meanwhile, across time, Julia and Claire finally track down the last trace of Brian's existence. They find a ruined church, its stones blackened by fire, and inside, a grave marked only with initials. BF Julia's heart breaks, because she realizes she's found the end before she's found the man. But as she places her hand on the stone, something strange happens. The ground trembles. The same energy that once pulled her through time stirs again, stronger, wilder. Claire shouts for her to stop, but Julia doesn't listen. She closes her eyes and whispers, "Take me to him." Back in the 18th century, the air shimmers. Brian, bound and awaiting execution, feels a sudden warmth, a rush of wind like a whisper through the cell. The guards notice nothing, but he lifts his head, sensing something impossible. Outside, as lightning splits the sky, Julia appears, half conscious, bleeding from the stone's power, but alive. She's arrived too late to change history, but not too late to understand it. When she's discovered by the rebels still loyal to Brian, they take her to him. For a moment that defies time itself, ancestor and descendant finally meet. Brian stares at her in disbelief. She looks like Ellen, same eyes, same voice trembling with courage. When she tells him her name, when she says she's come from another time to understand the truth, he laughs softly. Then time truly has gone mad, he says. But beneath the smile, he feels something deeper, a connection beyond reason. Julia pleads with him to escape, to change his fate, but Brian shakes his head. If I run from death, then my blood means nothing, he says. Go back. Tell them we fought because we believed. The next morning, as the sun rises over the hills, Brian is led to the gallows. The soldiers expect fear, but what they see instead is peace. He looks out at the horizon, whispering Ellen's name under his breath. And then, quietly, he speaks the words of their oath. Where thou deest, I will die. The rope tightens, and just as the trapdoor opens, Julia reaches out, touching his hand. In that split second, a surge of light engulfs them both. The world bends, and time fractures again. When Julia wakes, she's back at Cray Na Dun, lying beside the stones with baby William in her arms, and the grave she once saw in ruins is gone. In its place, a carving reads, Blood remembers. She doesn't know if Brian was saved or if history simply shifted, but she feels him, his strength, his courage, alive in her son's heartbeat. Claire, watching from a distance, realizes what it means. The past cannot be erased, but sometimes it can be rewritten in the blood of those who remember. As the episode closes, we see Ellen standing by the river, where she last saw Brian. She carries a child now, their child, and as she looks into the mist, she whispers the same words he once spoke. Whither thou goest, I will go. The wind rises, carrying her voice into the hills, and for a brief moment, it feels like time answers back. Season 2 ends not with closure, but with a haunting question. What if love is the only force powerful enough to fight fate? Because in Blood of My Blood, destiny isn't written in stone. It's written in sacrifice. And the war for the Fraser legacy has only just begun.